why are we here today talking about this topic of one planet, many faiths? Many of you may have seen, you may have received either on Facebook or somebody sent you a little YouTube message of an astronaut, Colonel Chris Hadfield. And he was telling why, in his 2,500 orbits around the Earth, why all of those orbits made him so optimistic. He said, "I've had the chance of going around the world thousands of times. I think it is 2,593 or so. Lots of orbits of the world. At first you are just kind of overwhelmed by the roaring vastness, the kaleidoscope, the beauty of it. But after a while, you really start to see the intricacy of the world, the beauty of the individual parts of the world. But even more importantly, of how they all actually fit together to see the world as one place. You see this every 92 minutes, over and over again. It is really reassuring, and part of the reason I'm optimistic for 2015, as having seen the whole world so many times, you just don't focus on the small flare of points negatively. There are those points all around the world where there is negativity. The fighting in the Middle East, the fighting in Africa, the injustices in Australia and other places. You don't just focus on the negativity. You see the immense patience and inherent beauty and the agelessness of the planet, and that builds up confidence, optimism. So why is it that we have so much trouble in following those commandments of loving God and loving the neighbour, or if you do not believe in a monotheistic God, loving the good and loving the neighbour? It doesn't leave anyone out. Why do we have so much trouble in loving the neighbour? So I hope today that with our speakers after lunch, that we will be able to take home some practical suggestions of how we might do that.
Thank you, and I also just add my welcome and how what a pleasure it is to be among such a good gathering of people, such a diverse group. Something I shared with the group a few months ago. Travelled for 10 years. It crossed billions of kilometres, and it landed on a comet speeding 54,717 kilometres an hour, and it did so within 2 minutes of its planned landing. I'm referring to the Rosetta spacecraft and its landing craft called Philae, a device which is the size of a washing machine, which last year was hitched a ride on a comet. It's an astonishing achievement, and it beamed its pictures back from the rocky surface, generated awe and excitement far beyond the scientific world. In fact, you could say it was a break from the torments that were down here on Earth, that for a few short moments we enjoyed a rare respite from our earthly woes. For a few merciful days, we escaped the horrors of ISIS and the fear of Ebola and the pain of child abuse and poverty. And after the events of the past week, if not the past months, the unspeakable murder of the Jordanian pilot burnt alive, the brutal killing of Kenji Goto, the cold killers at Charlie Hebdo, the callous terror at the kosher supermarket in Paris, Martin Square, schoolyard in Pakistan, Nigeria, the unimaginable cruelty of the human heart. And after the world has descended into this labyrinth of evil yet again, it's good to be reminded of a story like Rosetta, which is about the ascent of the human spirit, the prophetic rather than the primeval, the cooperative rather than the cruel, the mutual rather than the brutal. The story speaks to us because, as it says, because it's more than a diversion. It's in fact an antidote. a story of human cooperation in a world of conflict, because Germany, Italy, France, Britain, USA, they all work together to bring about this achievement. And to me, it's a story, therefore, of what people can do when they work together. A tale of what we can achieve when we put aside our differences and we pool our strengths and our talents. It's also about the audacity of faith, the sheer chutzpah of those scientists to believe that they could land a craft on a comet. And while the scientists are probing the deepest mysteries, including the riddle of how life began, for people of faith, it's about the awesome quality of creation, the very mystery of life and God's purpose in placing us on this flawed planet. That's what beamed across to us, across those dark and cosmic expanses. We are here to make a difference. We are here to shine some light into the dark spaces. We are here to work together for a greater good. The spacecraft is actually named after the Rosetta, which, as you will know, is the discovery that unlocked the secrets of the hieroglyphics. And perhaps the deepest secrets, though, that this craft unlocked is the language of human communication, cooperation against bloodshed, violence, and war, and saying they are not inevitable. And while we are here today as people of many different faiths, and today is an expression of our belief in communication, in cooperation. And it's about saying no to terror, no to hatred, no to extremism within our faiths, and especially let's unite with our Muslim brothers and sisters to give them the courage and the strength to confront the evil distortion of Islam that is Islamic State. This is not the way of God. It is not the way of Allah. It is not the way of Elohim. It is not the way, surely, of anyone who believes in goodness. The poignant words of Kenji Goto, the Japanese journalist, he tweeted in 2010 the following message, and I think it's especially powerful. Hate, he said, is not for human beings. Judgment lies with God. That's what he said. That is what I learned from my Arab brothers and sisters. And living in our gloriously multicolored, multicultured, multi-faith Melbourne, let each of us commit to one act of reaching out this year to another, to the other, to invite someone of a different faith into our homes, into our community, to break bread with them, to reach out of our insularity of our own communities, about maintaining our integrity and embracing the differences. It took faith, it took patience, determination, cooperation, brains, and yes, a whole heap of money as well, to land Rosetta on the comet. With these qualities, we can not only reach out and touch the face of God, but we can also reach out and touch the face of humanity. And as the Voyager, it's another spacecraft, a space probe that was launched by NASA some 30 years before the Rosetta, as it was moving past Saturn, on the very edge of the solar system in 1981, Carl Sagan, the astronomer, suggested that the spacecraft take one last picture of Earth. And so the cameras were turned towards us. And in this photograph, in the center of the scattered X-ray reflected from a small angle between the sun and the Earth, planet Earth appeared as a small, pale blue planet in a grainy photograph. It takes up less than a single pixel in a frame of 640,000 individual pixels. And Sagan's words, which I'm going to end with, are, he said, from this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest, but it is for us. It is different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everybody you've heard of, every single human being has lived their lives. That planet, on that spot, the aggregate of our joy and of our suffering. The Earth is a very small stage, he said, in a vast cosmic arena. Think of all the blood that has been spilled by all those generals and emperors. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of the pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequently their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatred. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. But at the end of the day, and at the beginning of this year, let us together here in Melbourne strive to do all that we can to protect, to nurture, to cherish one another, and to protect, to cherish, and to nurture the small and pale blue dot, the only home that we've ever known.
In the name of God Almighty, with various names, Allah, God, Waheguru, Ram, so on and so forth. There are millions of names of God, and yet He's still the same one God. I bow in reverence to all the learned people in this room, and may God bless all that similar soul that we have within us sitting in this room. It is the same soul of that supreme soul, and we are all the humans made out of the same clay that God has in His factory up there. God bless all. Now, we are here to talk about one planet, many faiths putting peace into practice. I'm sharing from the Sikh faith. I'm with the Sikh Interfaith Council of Victoria. The Sikh concept of dharma. Dharma is something, it's one's duty as required by different human relationships in different situations of socio-political spheres. It's also the benchmark of accountability at every social and political level. In many, or rather in any relationship and situation, the concept of dharma requires a person to act and behave in a certain way. Ultimately, the discipline of dharma provides stability in human societies. Where there is no dharma, there is chaos and conflict. Means being truthful to our own beliefs, which will bring us peace on earth. Now, what we are going to do is, I'm just going to share, to establish peace on earth. This was a solution by the founder of the Sikh faith, Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, about 540 over years ago. He says, if you have a bag of wisdom or philosophy, open it so that it can be shared by others. If your friends have good philosophy, adopt it. Only adopt good philosophy, leave the others which are not acceptable. This is from our scriptures, page 765. In our scriptures, it also says, if a man sings of God and hears of Him, let love of God sprout within him. All his sorrows shall vanish, and in his mind, God will bestow abiding peace. Now we talk about peace in the world. Peace in the world that is outside. As long as a person is not peaceful from within, you cannot be peaceful without. If I do not love myself, I cannot love my wife, my kids, my fellow society, community, so on and so forth. It starts from one. Just like all of us started from the one God Almighty, we all have to start from ourselves. And within us, we have that source of power, which is the divine power. So it is all about starting from within. Now is the gracious Lord's ordinance promulgated. No one shall cause another pain or injury. All mankind shall live in peace together under the shield of administrative benevolence. This is on our scriptures, page 74. Now we talk about earth. There is, in our scriptures, describing what earth is for, God created. He said, nights, seasons, days, weeks, wind, water, fire is the center of earth. Amidst all these natural phenomena and resources, the earth is the place as a venue to practice righteousness. Thereon are various types of living beings, and their names and kinds are uncountable. By their deeds, their destinies are judged. The court of the ever-existing God is true. In that court, only nobles are accepted. This honor of acceptance of good deed is achieved by the blessing of God. And to get the blessing of God, again, is whether we are sincere to ourselves, our beliefs, in our religion. It is common understanding that all faiths have it in them, doing good deeds, and that is what required of us by God, because He created the entire universe. Sincerely believing in what we have and what we have within us and our beliefs, And if we ignite that fire of love of God within us, hatred just cannot exist. If there's a mosquito hiding somewhere in the corner of this room, just keep spraying the Mortein spray. As the Mortein spray fills this room, that mosquito has to run out or die. So to kill that hatred, we got to improve and be truthful, and no faith teaches bad. My other hobbies is reading of faith. It's just beautiful. The more I read, I find more commonalities. Again, it's our perception. We misinterpret our faith. You see a peacock, a positive person will say, wow, look at the feathers, so beautiful. A negative person might say, look at ugly feet. So again, it's how we perceive another. It's important. All other beings, excluding human, are at your service. You are the commander of earth. It's in our scriptures. God, you are the commander of earth, not just us Sikhs, the whole creation. Altruism, it has been represented that education of a person is only good or worth if it is used for the service and uplift of humanity. The welfare of humanity is considered the service to God in Sikhism. And here from our scriptures, Guruji says that education is worth which is applied to the welfare of humanity. No point me having PhDs and big degrees if I do not see the humanity of my fellow man, who could be a road sweeper, who could be anyone. That is where we lose it. Guruji says all those living beings are yours. Without service, no one can obtain reward. And I hear the gong, and I'm going to move fast. Now, another place, Guruji says, success are those lives who consider that everyone is a child of God. Those who have realized the perfect God take along with them their colleagues across the sea of life. That means we don't just pray for ourselves, we pray for our fellow beings, regardless of race or religion. Guru Nanak Dev Ji preached the oneness, omnipresent, omnipotence, and omniscience of God, and the sameness of all people. Every human being is equal to each other, as explained in the following scriptures. Call everyone exalted, none appears to be low, everyone has been molded from the same matter, and the same source of light shines in all. Finally, Guru Nanak explains such actions are developed through nature and the grace of God, which cannot be erased. And I will flip 2 pages and go to the last one. Guruji says, sweetness and humility are the essence of virtue and goodness. Guruji says in another verse, a person who does not threaten anybody, does not accept the threat of anybody, that person is described as wise and intellectual. This is in our scriptures in page 1400. Now, in conclusion, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's philosophy is universal and accepted because it speaks to the human race, does not speak to Sikh alone. So similarly, all religions are represented and put forward their principle of universal acceptability. If all of us can bring that out, that, hey, this is something that we accept you, everybody talk more about that, then all religions can sit together and bring about that peace of whole humanity. Now, ultimately, it will result in reduction of expenditure on arms race. So if someone here ends up being a prime minister or president or somewhere, and he has that quality in him, before even somebody provokes him, he will try to see that the goodness in the person and try to have a dialogue rather than say, I'll answer a weapon with a weapon. So in conclusion, Sikhs all around the world, 25 million, the 5th largest religion in the world, praise these 2 times morning and evening. He says, Nanak naam chardi kala tere pane sarbad dapala, that in the name of God, may the whole human race prosper and be happy and be at peace. And we have that source within us, we have that power. And that power does not give us the right to hate. The minute we hate, God goes away. There's a verse, the scriptures, it says, Jab hum hote tu nahi, ab tu hi main nahi. God, when there's I, there's no you. Now that I realize there's you, I cease to exist. When the I diminishes and the we comes in, peace comes. In the end, the message to bring back if we can't see God in all, we can't see God at all. Thank you very much. God bless all.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to God. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. And I send salutations upon the final messenger, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings be upon you all. I want to thank my previous two speakers for inspirational talks, and particularly my speaker before me. I felt like I resonated with everything you said, so thank you kindly. To be honest with you, I struggled to find the right words to share with you today. Not because there's not an ample of verses in the Quran that speak about peace, or that the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is not filled with unequivocal examples of forgiveness, compassion, and mercy to humanity. No, but rather because the troubling times we find ourselves in, I believe, is symptomatic of deeper issues which I cannot bring myself to brush over with a few inspirational words. The truth is, we collectively, as the human race, have happily chosen a life of unconsciousness for some time now, which has led us into what I would say the darkest era in human history, whereby all that exists within our planet as we know it is struggling to even survive, let alone live in peace, let alone flourish as a civilization. All due to because of our actions. And I say our, we as faith leaders and we as people in humanity, I say our, because I believe the greatest lie we have ever been sold and told is that we are separate. I do not believe we are separate. We are one. We are different, but we are not separate. We are one humanity, and I believe the Indigenous people know this quite well, living with the natural surroundings, living with the earth. And we have lost that. How did we get here? To the point where violence, fear, and corruption is part of the parcel of everyday life, where children play that as games, and we watch that on the movie, and we can't even tell the reality, the difference between reality and movies anymore. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, says, there's a part in the body that if it's kept well, the entire body is kept well. And if it's unkept, the entire body is corrupt. And that is the heart. And that we're not talking about just the human body. That is, if the heart is kept well, the entire body is well. We're talking about the spiritual heart. The human body also reflects the system that's outside of us. If we take care of the human heart, the world at large will be kept well. As we witness the darkening of the world, we can only conclude that the spiritual heart of humanity has, in fact, died. We observe humans moving around, but with dead hearts. It's almost like the living dead. What do I mean by that? With no compassion, no love, without tenderness, without gentleness, without mercy. We see that day in and day out. We have forgotten what it means to be a human being. The Quran said, لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have honored the children of Adam. We have forgotten what it means to be honored. Human beings are dignified beings. We once upon a time walked on the earth with dignity, righteousness. We held justice, virtue. Now, I would say the animal kingdom holds that better than we do. We believe that there are three reasons for our existence, and I am taking us to this point of discussion as to why do we even exist? We don't have this conversation. The third point is Khalifa, and I wonder whether I can even use that term today, whether it's politically correct to use the word Khalifa. Khalifa means a vicegerent. God says to David in the Quran, "O David, we did indeed make thee vicegerent, Khalifa on earth. So judge between men with truth and justice. And do not follow your own desires. Why? For they will mislead you from the path of God." Our lesson is there. We are first and foremost vicegerents on earth. And to be vicegerents on earth, we must lead with justice. But vicegerents in the Islamic tradition has there are two types. One, you are a ruler upon yourself first. You are a vicegerent upon yourself first, and then a ruler onto others. We must rule ourselves with justice first. As people of faith, I encourage my own community and then the others. Are we being a people of justice? Do we stand up for justice even if it's against ourselves? I ask my Hindu, my Christian, my Jewish, my Buddhist communities, do we stand up against ourselves even if it is against our own family, our own children? The Prophet Muhammad said, even if it's my own daughter Fatima, I will stand up for justice. But the truth is, what we're learning from this is the reason we are lacking mercy, lacking peace in the world is because we lack justice. We cannot have peace if there is injustice around us. So how do we corner it down and bring it down to our tradition? All our traditions are filled with practices such as prayer and fasting and litanies. We have something to uphold that the wider community does not have. And I would argue that our faith communities are losing that. And we need to hold on to our tradition. The tradition that is strong, those traditions are there to discipline the inner state. That's why they are there, to discipline our inner state. But right now what we have, as we water down all of the values in society, faith is also being watered down. So that is being reflected in society, and we no longer have strong faith leadership. So I ask myself in conclusion, and onto you, that as Rumi says, he says, I can't pretend to be a lion, able to conquer the enemy. To master myself would be enough. I remember seeing a cartoon recently where a man was standing up giving a lecture on a podium such as this with a huge audience, and he said to the audience, who wants change? And the entire audience had their hand up. Next cartoon says, who wants to change? And everybody put their hand down. Creating change outside requires change within. On a practical level, it means taking care of our own family first. Making sure that the elderly amongst us are being taken care of, our own family, our spouses, our children, everyone that we are responsible for. It starts with small steps internally and our immediate family, then we can talk about the outside world. I thank you so much for your time.
Why don't we begin just breathing out and breathing in? Attentiveness to our breathing reminds us of the gift of life. We breathe out. Is this my last breath? We breathe in. We're still here. The life, the gift of life, given to us entirely by forces beyond our control, encouraging us to understand life as gift and nurture and sustain all life. On our little island, I placed at your tables a beautiful painting by an Aboriginal artist portraying our little island and his yearning for our reconciliation, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders with ourselves and each other, and our reconciliation as a people. As we've heard so poignantly, the world is full of tears, and as we've also heard, we are blessed as a people with those things that make up our life in Australia. My question, followed by several suggestions, is this: is not this the time when Australia has the highest responsibility and call to be a people of hope for the rest of the human family? We are aware of our many advantages: strong economy, political stability, range of good organisations between the individual and the state, separation of powers, free media, flourishing arts community. As these dear speakers have said already, the thing missing is the matter of the spirit. The world needs some place which is a place of hope. Which people is better placed than we to be that source of hope to the rest of the human family, how we can flourish in our diversity together? We have a high calling and a high responsibility as the people of faith on this island we call Australia, we call home. My little suggestions are these. The first one is pilgrimage. Helen Summers' daughter organised for my wife and I to go on pilgrimage on the Camino in Spain. You go there, you walk along, you become aware of the things you should let go of, the enmities, the bitternesses, the stuff that you carry around. To symbolise it, you put a little rock on the little marker showing you where to go. As you go along, you see lots of people have gone before you, and there's huge mounds of rocks. People have let go of all sorts of stuff as they've made the pilgrimage. Can we create a pilgrimage route here in Australia that we would all share in, which would have the blessings of pilgrimage and also help us to express the repentance that we feel for our failures as religious people, and create that clean spirit for our nation? A second practical thing, we all have great techniques to help with the most important task of being able to choose what thoughts we have because of what they lead to us saying, doing. That connection, that irreducible connection between our thoughts, our words and our actions, which we know shape our character and thus our destiny. Becoming aware of our inner talk, our self-dialogue, and becoming free to choose those thoughts which are peaceable thoughts. We all have a contribution to make in that space. The work of prayer and meditation that we can share to help people better go beyond the unconscious to the conscious and consciously choose what we think and thus what we say and what actions we take to break the cycle of violence and cruelty. And finally, advocacy. Most of us add our contribution on in this space to the other things we kind of get paid for. We need to extend the space. We need to extend the friendships. Ralph, I invite you to dinner. You had that suggestion. It's a bit like the tennis players last week, kind of having engagements in front of thousands of people. We need to have the friendships, but we need to extend the space. We need more resources, don't we, to make it possible for that which we enjoy here to be enjoyed by more and more, to bring more people into the tent, and to see this as Australia's destiny, Australia's high calling as a citizen of the global family. Yesterday's scriptures for me said, "Pursue peace with everyone and holiness." As I listen here today, we all speak that word. Thank you.
So I thought Helen took us up into space with the astronaut, and Ralph took us out to the comet, and Philip has just brought us back down to Earth on a parachute. In between times, Jasbir suggested uplifting humanity is a service to God. My old school motto, Sursum Corda, is usually translated as lift up our hearts. Another translation is high ideals. Ralph refers to the ascent of the human spirit. Sarah says we have chosen a life of unconsciousness. I think that was a challenge. The greatest lie we have been told and sold is that we're separate. That's not true. One planet, many faiths, many people. One planet, one small blue dot. Breathing is perhaps the most important thing we can do. And we do it every few seconds, tens of thousands of times a day. 2.5 billion times in our lifetime. Where does it come from and where does it go to? And what do we do here with it? Do we stand up for justice and mercy and faith? Do we invite the other, the stranger, someone else, home for dinner or a barbecue with vegetarian sausages? Advocacy, do we speak up for faith? Or do we treasure our faith silently in the privacy of our own hearts and our own closets? And out in the world we just pretend to be like everyone else. Don't cause trouble. Je suis Charlie. I'd like to thank our speakers and Reverend Helen Summers for bringing us all together so we can meet and talk. Perhaps this is the only time we see each other every year. That's a terrific thing. Let's do it more often. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.